You were not born weak. You were trained to be. From the moment you could understand language, every institution around you, school, family, religion, culture, worked in quiet coordination to sand down your edges, to make you agreeable, to make you predictable, to make you safe for a world that benefits from your compliance. They called it kindness. They called it humility. They told you that vulnerability was strength, that sharing your wounds publicly was courage, that the good and the honest would eventually be rewarded. That belief is the exact reason you keep losing. There are 7 lessons ahead of you. The 7th one will ask you to confront the most dangerous enemy you have ever faced, and it will not be someone else. If you are not ready to be called out, close this now. But if you are tired of being the one who reacts, the one who is caught off guard, the one who keeps rebuilding from the same rubble, stay. Society did not raise you to be powerful.
It raised you to be useful to those who are. You were brainwashed to believe that honest men finish ahead, that loyalty is sacred, that kindness is returned in kind. You were taught that emotion is authenticity, and that wearing your heart on your sleeve makes you real. Machiavelli watched empires fall because good men believed exactly that. He wrote in The Prince that a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. He was not prescribing cruelty. He was diagnosing a fatal error in how most people understand survival. Robert Greene encoded this for the modern world in the 48 Laws of Power. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. These are not cynical tricks. They are the invisible grammar of every room you have walked into, operating whether you acknowledged it or not. I am going to show you 7 lessons that build a mind nothing can break. Not emotionally, architecturally. But be warned, the man who reads this and does nothing is worse off than the man who never read it at all. Lesson 1. Power lives in perception, not reality. The world does not respond to what you are. It responds to what it sees. The average man believes that truth will protect him, that a clean record, a sound argument, and honest intentions will be enough. They will not. The world does not process reality. It processes narrative, and the person who controls the narrative controls the outcome, regardless of what actually happened. This is not cynicism. This is psychology. Solomon Asch's conformity experiments demonstrated that when a group unanimously chose an obviously wrong answer, real subjects changed their own correct perceptions to match, not because they were foolish, because humans are wired to prioritize social consensus over individual truth. Reality bends to consensus, and consensus is constructed. Cosimo de' Medici understood this better than any ruler of his age. He never held formal political office, yet he governed Florence for over 30 years. He funded artists, built hospitals, cultivated an image so indispensable that when his enemies exiled him, the city's credit collapsed. Florence begged him back. He returned without a word of vengeance. That is not luck. That is architecture. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Never forget that. When your narrative is attacked, do not react. Reacting confirms it. Do not over-explain.
Over-explaining signals insecurity. Become uninterpretable. Let your silence hold the space that their accusations try to fill. One precise action that contradicts a false narrative is worth 10,000 words of defense. Control the story. Control the room. Control everything that follows. What controls perception controls power. And the next lesson controls something far more dangerous. Lesson 2. Your emotions are not your truth. They are your map to defeat. The moment someone can predict how you will feel, they already own your next move. Anger is readable. Desperation is the most readable of all. When people can see your emotional architecture, they have a blueprint of your weaknesses. Every person who has ever manipulated you, every employer who underpaid you, every rival who outmaneuvered you, did so by reading your emotional response before you understood it yourself. The average man calls emotional control repression. He is wrong. Stanford psychologist James Gross distinguished suppression from regulation. Suppression buries emotion and costs you, physiologically and cognitively. Regulation means you process what you feel internally while governing what you express externally. That is not dishonesty. That is mastery. Machiavelli advised the prince to know how not to be good, meaning to detach from emotional posture when it weakens strategic position. Augustus Caesar endured public insults from political opponents for years before he held enough power to respond. He smiled. He waited. When he finally had the Senate, he extended mercy, not because he forgave them, but because mercy served his image better than revenge. Cold, precise, untouchable. For the next 30 days, before responding to anything that provokes you, ask one question. Does this reaction serve my objective? If the answer is no, your expression does not shift. Your voice does not change. You become the observer of your own experience, not a passenger inside it. Emotion must be fuel, not a fuse. You are still here. Good. The fragile ones already left. What follows will cost more, not less. Lesson 3. Loyalty is a variable. Build accordingly. The most devastating betrayals of your life were not caused by evil people. They were caused by ordinary people placed in circumstances where self-interest outweighed their commitment to you. You were not betrayed because you were unworthy. You were betrayed because you misunderstood the nature of loyalty. It is not a permanent condition. It is a calculation, updated daily based on cost, benefit, and available alternatives. Machiavelli was direct. Men will sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. Loyalty is downstream of interest, always. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby, shows that humans form bonds based on perceived security and mutual benefit. The moment you become less necessary, less resourceful, or less aligned with someone's trajectory, their attachment begins to dissolve, usually before they consciously admit it. Julius Caesar trusted his inner circle completely. He believed loyalty was repaid by loyalty. He walked into the Senate on the Ides of March, surrounded by men he had elevated, forgiven, and enriched. 23 stab wounds, 60 senators with knives. This was not a failure of his enemies. It was a failure of his assumptions. Never build your survival on another person's consistency. Build systems. Position yourself so that the withdrawal of any single ally does not collapse your standing. Keep your plans compartmentalized.
No individual should hold the full picture. This is not paranoia. It is the same logic that governs how intelligence agencies protect state secrets. Expect nothing from loyalty. Build everything from structure. Then betrayal becomes information, not devastation. The question is never who will stay. The question is, what have you built that functions without them? Lesson 4. Calmness is not a temperament. It is psychological warfare. When you remain still while others destabilize, you do not just appear strong, you appear alien. And what appears alien cannot be predicted, and what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. 99% of people in any confrontation are operating from the limbic system, raw reactivity, adrenaline, ego.
The frontal cortex, the seat of strategic reasoning, shuts down under emotional stress. This is neuroscience, not metaphor. The calmer your nervous system, the more of your actual intelligence you have access to in real time. Machiavelli compared the ideal strategist to the fox and the lion. The lion holds strength, the fox holds cunning. Neither alone is sufficient. But the man who appears to be a lion while thinking like a fox holds every room he enters. Napoleon Bonaparte was documented as remaining cold during battlefield chaos, cannon fire tearing apart his ranks while he revised strategy with minimal change in expression. That composure was not natural disposition. It was trained through repeated exposure to stress until stress no longer produced panic. In your next confrontation, slow your speech by 20%. Do not fill silences. Let others rush to fill them instead. Every second you hold without reacting, you demonstrate that you cannot be moved on command. That demonstration, once made, is irreversible. Calmness terrifies, because it implies you see something others do not. Let them spend their energy trying to figure out what it is. Comment below. I hold the silence. Lesson 5. Silence is not the absence of power. It is its most concentrated form. The most dangerous person in any room speaks the least. Words are exposure. Every sentence you speak reveals something about your reasoning, your fears, your desires. The more legible you become, the more controllable you are. The average man fills silence because it makes him uncomfortable. That discomfort is a vulnerability. He cannot tolerate being unknown, so he explains, defends, justifies, and with every word hands over another piece of his map. Machiavelli understood that mystery preserves authority. Robert Greene codified it as Law 4. Always say less than necessary. The more you say, the more common you appear, and the less in control of your own position. Catherine de' Medici, Queen Regent of France, was called the Serpent Queen by men who feared what they could not read. She ruled through silence and patience in a court of violent men for 40 years. She listened at every table while others performed. Because she understood everyone's secrets while revealing none of her own, she outlasted 3 of her sons' reigns and died with her power intact. In negotiations, the first person to speak after an offer is made typically concedes. Silence creates pressure that the insecure rush to relieve. You do not rush. You hold. You watch. When you do speak, you have already won the psychological frame. Remove one sentence from every conversation today. Not the weakest one, the most explanatory one, the one where you justify yourself. Strike it. Watch the frame shift. Power is not loud, it is measured. And the next lesson makes silence visible. Lesson 6. Absence is the architecture of value. Presence loses power when it becomes constant.
The more accessible you are, the less you are respected.
This is not philosophy. This is the scarcity heuristic, documented extensively by Robert Cialdini. When something is rare, the human mind inflates its perceived value automatically. What can be accessed at any moment carries less weight than what must be earned. This is why great artists go years between work. Why the most compelling leaders are not the most visible ones. Why you are less interesting when you are always available. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who appears too often becomes ordinary. One who appears selectively becomes a myth. The weak crave constant attention because they fear being forgotten. The strong withdraw deliberately to make every entrance felt. Cosimo de' Medici never explained his movements. He cultivated ambiguity so carefully that contemporaries wrote he seemed to know things before they happened. He did not. He processed information quietly, while others speculated loudly, and the silence made him appear prophetic. Reduce your availability by 30%, not to punish anyone, to recalibrate their perception of your value. Stop responding immediately to every message. Stop offering your full attention to those who have not earned it. Your absence is not a gap. It is a statement. It says, "My presence is not guaranteed." It says, "I have a world beyond this room," and the ones who pursue you harder when you step back are the only ones worth returning to. The rarest minds understand the rhythm of presence. They know when to step forward and when to vanish. A constant flame burns fast. A controlled one lasts. Lesson 7. The final war is always inside. Every battle you have ever lost externally was preceded by a defeat you did not notice. A quiet internal collapse disguised as reason. A willingness to accept less dressed up as wisdom. A private surrender made before the first external shot was ever fired. The strongest adversary you will face has your voice. It is not your failures or your history. It is the story you built around them. The narrative that converts past defeat into future impossibility. The accumulated weight of every moment you chose comfort over growth and told yourself it was patience. That voice is not truth. It is erosion. And most people live their entire lives without identifying it as the enemy. Viktor Frankl, who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, identified what he called the last human freedom, the ability to choose your response to any given circumstance. Between stimulus and response, he wrote, there is a space. In that space lies your power. Suffering did not break Frankl. The refusal to let suffering write the final sentence did not break him either. What kept him whole was the trained refusal to surrender his interior world to external conditions. Machiavelli himself is the evidence. Arrested in 1513, subjected to strappato, arms tied behind his back, suspended and dropped until his shoulders dislocated, he confessed to nothing because there was nothing to confess. They exiled him to a farm in Sant'Andrea, stripped of career, city, and influence. He sat down, he wrote. From that ruin, from that enforced silence, from that darkness,
He produced The Prince, one of the most influential documents in the history of power. Not because he was free, because his mind refused the category of broken. That is what an unbreakable mind actually looks like. Not the absence of suffering, not the performance of strength. The refusal to let circumstance author your identity. This path is cold. It will cost you relationships built on your compliance, illusions that were more comfortable than truth, and a version of yourself you have been protecting long past its usefulness. It will give you something no external condition can ever grant. A mind that no person, no failure, and no circumstance can fully occupy. The wolf does not explain himself to the sheep. The man in exile does not require the crowd's permission to build. And the mind that governs itself requires nothing from the world to remain intact. That freedom is cold, but it is the only freedom that is entirely yours. You made it to the end. Most do not. That separation is not accidental. It is already the evidence of something forming. These 7 lessons are not a list. They are a structure. When perception is controlled, emotion is regulated, loyalty is anticipated, calmness is weaponized, silence is cultivated, absence is strategic, and the internal war is fought with full intention. Nothing external reaches the interior. Subscribe not because I asked you to. Subscribe because you have decided to stop being predictable. Because you understand that every week without sharpening is a week spent dulling. Because what is built here is not comfort, it is capacity. What the algorithm prefers not to surface lives deeper in this channel. The mechanics of psychological influence, the history of power that school never taught you, the architecture of the unbreakable mind built lesson by lesson. The untouchable mind is not inherited, it is constructed. Silence by silence, refusal by refusal, choice by deliberate choice. You have the blueprint now. The only remaining question is whether you will build.